Welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chaney podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Chaney. And on this podcast, we highlight the expertise and the experience of folks from across the supply chain. This conversation is going to be no different. And I think it's actually a really special one because it's one of those editions where there's another podcaster on the other side of the microphone. So I'm expecting some amazing answers. I might even get a couple questions thrown back at me. Who knows? But today we're going to be chatting with Enrique Alvarez, who is with Vector Global Logistics. It's a company that you've probably seen out and about if you know how to spell supply chain and have anything to do with logistics and transportation, because they've made a name for themselves, I think, mostly or to some degree attached to the way that they are a B-Corp status company, which I think is a really unique place in the marketplace for them to fill. I really want to unpack that more. But before we go any further, Enrique, could you take a minute to introduce folks to who you are and what you're all about?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me with you. This is always exciting. I mean, you and I met a couple of times already, and we bump into each other at different supply chain functions around the world. So it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Certainly.
Well, a little bit about me. I'm originally from Mexico City, born and raised, and then came to the US to study business school in 2004, graduated in 2006, and then started working for the Boston Consulting Group. So my background is in strategy consulting, and I did that for almost 3 years. I met my current business partner, Brian Oxley, while doing strategy consulting for BCG, and we really wanted to start something on our own. And after many sessions and a lot of years, we actually decided that we wanted to build something from scratch and we wanted it to be very unique. And very randomly, we bumped into a company that was doing logistics, a freight forwarding company, and we had a chance to work with them on a project. And after the engagement with them, we found out that this was an incredible industry to be a part of, and that's why we decided to jump in.
I love it. The number of times that I have folks on the show that have this tale of backing into or stumbling into the industry,
Right.
the stories never get old. So before we kind of get into that a little bit deeper, I'm kind of curious, you mentioned that you're from Mexico. Can you talk a little bit about your upbringing, what that was like, and, maybe your first jobs, your first entrepreneurial sort of adventures, and what you thought you wanted to be when you grow up?
Absolutely. And so, yes, originally from Mexico City. I love football. I still do soccer, the way we call it here in the US now.
Hmm.
And my upbringing was pretty normal. I was blessed to be with both my parents, a good, loving household, and they basically just taught us a lot of different things that I think make me the person that I am now. A
Hmm.
couple of the ones that I can share with you and your audience are just giving back. I think has always been very important to them. I mean, we didn't really have much when I was growing up. I mean, middle class family, and the one thing that they did, both of them gave us is not only all their love and time, but like education. Education was very important for my parents, and they basically invested a lot in me and my siblings. I am the eldest of three. I have a brother, Alex, who's 2 years younger, and then I have a sister, Ade, who is 10 years younger than us, and we had amazing parents.
What was your first sort of work experiences? I always like learning that these folks that find themselves in logistics and supply chain, there's often this little spark of that in their first entrepreneurial sort of adventures. Was that the case for you?
Well, I gotta say that the entrepreneur in my household was my brother. He
Okay.
was usually the one that actually had all these different ideas. One of the most famous ideas that he had was just back in the day when NAFTA, or the treaty between Mexico and the U.S., wasn't signed yet. We didn't have access to a lot of the U.S. candy like the Milky Ways and Nerds and Snickers and all those. And
Hmm.
we have family in Fort Worth, so I remember like us when we were kids flying to the US, to Dallas Fort Worth, to visit my cousins. And my brother always brought like a sack full of candy,
Yeah.
which he then actually sold in Mexico at our school for a profit. But no, so the entrepreneur in the family, at least at the beginning of our careers, was my brother, and I learned a
Hmm.
lot from him just by being with him. But then my first job, I had a bunch of different summer jobs, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. At one of the most fun for me, I guess, was I was a museum guide at a museum in Mexico City, which I thought was a new museum for children. It's called the Children's Museum Papalote, and the museum was brand new. I was the one that was going to be the first, I guess, class of tour guides in that museum. And
Okay.
the first couple of months were very interesting and fun, but then after a little bit, then you actually realize that you still have to deal with a lot of little children going through the museum, and it was a fun experience. But I did that. I was driving. I was driving kids a couple of times, and then I was also installing internet networks when internet was starting to grow.
Mm-hmm.
Through a friend of a friend, I was hired, and I was really not installing these networks. I was in charge of actually bringing up the cables up and down the stairs. So I was
Uh-huh.
really just carrying stuff around. But I was that was another interesting job that I had.
Wow, you helped to build the internet. I hope
Yes,
those
pretty
royalty
much.
payments are still trickling in.
Exactly. Exactly. By carrying all that coaxial cable up and down the stairs.
Man, it's so fun hearing. If you think about your role at the museum, there's a storytelling piece to that, right? Being a guide, and I feel like a lot of if you think about what you do with your podcast today, you share and you tell stories in supply chain.
Stories are fascinating, as you know, right? I mean, we both actually have the pleasure of interviewing other people, and we usually just have to listen to other people's stories. And stories are exciting. They're interesting. They're fun. They're inspiring. And so, yes, I'm happy to have the opportunity to just listen to other successful, inspiring individuals.
Let's continue that journey a little bit more. So in Mexico City, you had some kind of like jobs. You had an entrepreneurial brother that you learned the candy import business from.
Yep.
So as you were leaving home, kind of what kind of things were you thinking about doing, kind of as a young student
Well,
or adult?
no, and it's a good question, right? And I was raised by my parents, and they were both always, and maybe some people out there that are listening can relate to this, but they always said you got to study hard so you can have a good job. And it was
Hmm.
always about like having a good job and having a good job. So I bring this up because I wasn't really raised as an entrepreneur, right? And
Hmm.
this is something that I might be doing slightly different with my kids now. I
Yeah.
never really saw from my parents or my dad in particular someone that wanted to start something on his own. He always worked incredibly hard, but he always wanted to be a good employee, right? He
Hmm.
wanted to be a manager, and then he wanted to be a director, and but he was always trying to climb the corporate ladder, which is not something that I am doing right now, and it's something that I truly value, but it's not something that I was taught
Yeah.
how it worked. So before I left, and I left Mexico to come to the USA to study business school, my brother, actually, who's 2 years younger than me, came to the US to do that first. And he went to Berkeley, and I went actually visited him one weekend. I just had such an amazing time. Great experience, kind of like learning from people from all over the world that I was just immediately hooked to it. Right. And so I said, I want that experience for myself. So the next couple
Hmm.
of years, I basically just had to work hard, study hard, get the GMAT and all the other things done. And I was able to come to the US to study business school in 2004. And that's how I basically just stopped being, I guess, an employee and became a full-time student for 2 years, which I was very thankful of.
You have an interesting perspective here where you came to the US for college and obviously you've stuck around a little bit. Any perspectives on what it was like doing that then versus today? Is there more, in the kind of world that we live in, it's a little more friction, I think, to come to the US, to be part of that kind of program. Any insights on that?
Yeah, well, and a couple of things. First, I came for the for business, so undergrad I did in Mexico in Monterrey. I studied mechanical engineering at the
Okay.
Tecnológico de Monterrey. and I actually worked for 2 years with the Grupo Vitro, which is a flow glass manufacturing company down in Mexico. After that experience is when I applied and then came to the US to study business school.
Okay.
And answering your question, though, I think it is very different from today. I think without me having the firsthand experience being a student now, it is the communities and the society is more polarized. I think technology has helped expedite everything, not only the good things, but then also some of the bad things too.
Right.
And so I feel like maybe today, even though the world's a little more open and it's a little bit easier, to be honest, to come and study here in the US or maybe some other places in the world, because it's a little bit more accessible from a purely technological and information standpoint. It might be harder as well from like a more racist standpoint, or people that might not feel as comfortable coming to this country after everything that's going on these days.
Right. Right.
Well, and it's a shame, right? Because we all know, or at least I know now that I'm American, that this country was built by immigrants, and I think having diversity and immigration is very, very important for countries to thrive. And I think that's something that you want to keep fostering, so that people that have good ideas, that have different backgrounds, that are hardworking, that are honest, come to your country. I think that's what every country in the world would like to do.
Certainly. Certainly. Well, let's go back toward, I appreciated your comment about how so much of kind of like the traditional upbringing says you should go
Right.
work hard and get a good job, and how at some point that kind of can change and you start to see things and where you want to build your own thing. And but before we get to that, and what you're doing today, can you talk about those different career stops you've made along the way, up until you kind of broke out onto your own?
Yeah. So when I graduated, I had the opportunity to work for this flow glass manufacturing company called Grupo Vitro, and I had an incredible time with them. I was again lucky to be hired by this Italian director called Massimo, and he gave me the very unique opportunity at a very young age to go down to Colombia. And so after I graduated, a year after I graduated from college, I had the opportunity to go down to Colombia, to Bogota, and actually work at the flow glass distribution center there. And so I had a really good experience managing this distribution center, which was a small company that had a presence in Cartagena, in Bogota, Medellin, and Cali. And we had to close a couple of those, but I still had an incredible time. And I think that taught me a lot, just being by myself. I just recently graduated, and just having that experience in a different country, I think helped me a lot. From that, I came back to Mexico. I was in Monterrey at the time, and I had a couple other positions with the same company until, of course, I went one weekend with my brother. And as I mentioned before, I just had that incredible experience studying here in the US, and going to business school. And so that's what really changed my mindset from keep working hard and keep kind of climbing the corporate ladder to just take 2 years and invest in this new adventure, which is business school. And that's what I did. And I was once again lucky enough to apply to 10 different schools. I got rejected from both, but then I got accepted into the University of Pennsylvania, and I had two of the best years of my life at Wharton. So I can thank kind of everyone for that, right? The opportunity they gave me with Vitro, and then my brother for showing me, and my parents for raising me. And I think it's important to acknowledge that I've been very lucky, right? And I think most people don't realize that it's really not me, the one that has created all this life. It's luck, and
Yeah.
we should acknowledge it, and we should try to create those opportunities for other people as well.
You have said the word flow glass a couple of times here, and I
Yes.
know I'm curious is in knowing what exactly can you break that down into
Yes.
plain
And
English
that's a really
for
good
us?
question, and I should have paid attention to it. So the difference between float glass and roll glass is the process in which glass is manufactured these days. It's called float because you it's basically sand, a couple of different sand mixtures that are heated to a certain temperature, and then they're poured into a bed of liquid tin. And it's called float glass because the difference in density between the glass and the tin
Hmm.
makes it float on top of the tin. And then you have some rollers, they call rollers, that they just basically pull the glass, and so you imagine this huge pool of tin with glass on top, and they have certain rollers pulling it, and that's what creates all those glass sheets, or those
Wow.
sheets of glass that are then used for windshields and tabletops. And it's called float because the previous technology was rolling it. And sometimes if you go to like older houses and if you kind of look from one side to the other,
Hmm.
you can see that it's the light doesn't bends a little bit, and that means that it was probably manufactured with an older technology. Most
Okay.
glass these days is float glass, but good catch.
Well, curious minds want to
I'm a
know.
mechanical engineer, so I will
Yeah.
talk about machines and processes all day long.
Yep.
I wish I actually were doing something more engineering related, to be honest, but I'm not.
Yeah. Hey, there's supply chain engineers. I
Oh.
wanted to be an engineer getting out of high school and going to college, but I just didn't think I could cut it in the math department. But so went business instead. Was there an element of supply chain and logistics to what you were doing in that role, in those roles?
There was both when I was actually leading the distribution center in Colombia. Of course, like the distributing of the glass is all supply chain. Basically, it's a lot of
Right.
having the inventory on time and then delivering it to the customer, and it's all about good customer service. And so yes, and then when I came back to Mexico, I was in charge of the plant warehouse, which also had a lot to do with like receiving containers and then loading and shipping trucks around. So I did actually had some background in supply chain and logistics. I never really imagined that I was going to end up owning a supply chain forwarding company at some point, but I did fortunately had some background in it.
In the world of transportation and logistics, there's this concept of damage and delivered in full and on time and damage free. In glass, is the world around glass and logistics like very very figured out and engineered so there's very low damage despite the fact it being glass, or is there a lot of damage in glass
Good
logistics?
question. There's definitely more damage than usual, right? Because at the end of the day, it's glass, but you measure all those things very similarly as if
Mhm.
they were some other product. So it's a little bit more fragile, but you also have like different ways of transporting it with A-frames and some other packaging that it makes it not as I guess fragile as it is. But yes, there's a lot of there's more damage in glass. The only other good thing about glass is that it's 100% recyclable. So you
Oh.
can basically all of the glass that is actually broken, you can put back into the furnace, and then you can actually make more glass. So it's at least that part is easier than in some other industries.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. One of there's a book that I really really like that's called The World in a Grain, and it talks all about sand, and there's a lot about glass and how sand enables microscopes, telescopes, all the things that we need to make glass with, and glass has allowed humanity to prosper and do a lot of what we do thanks to sand, and glass being one of the products of it.
I look for the book. It sounds like a great suggestion. I've never heard of the book before, but
Yeah.
I know glass fairly well by now. And the technology, by the way, it's unbelievable. Right now, glass you can do with glass or using glass as one of the products. You have all these different windows that are very advanced when it comes to self-cleaning and
Hmm.
the solar. You can capture some rays and some temperatures, and the color can vary, and you can run some electricity through the windows, and you can actually make it opaque or translucent or whatever. So
Hmm.
it's yeah, technology has gone a long, long way since I started working with Vitro.
Cool thing, and I won't do any more promotion for the book. I do recommend it though. But an interesting thing is that there's a finite amount of the kind of sand crystals and grains that you need to make the high quality precision glass stuff and silicon and all that sort of good stuff. So, all right, off the sand, off glass. So move on.
Perfect.
Moving on to what is now, kind of what keeps you busy these days with Vector. And can you just kind of talk about, who it is that your ideal customer is and how you approach business and what makes you all different there?
Yeah, so well, Vector Global Logistics is a very unique results-based logistics freight forwarding company. I mean, we're headquartered here in Atlanta, Georgia. This is where we started the company a long time ago in 2009. So it's been a while. But we've been slowly growing it, and now we have presence in the US, Mexico, Chile, Peru, Ukraine, and we're hopefully going to open up a couple other offices in the next few months that
Great.
I'll let you know as soon as it's official. But we do our three main competitive advantages are one is based on a our culture is based on a book called Why Work Sucks. So it's oriented. It's the ROWE, results only work environment, which basically means you take the time and the space component out of the equation and you measure performance by results and results only. So what this translates to is an incredible uh, service to all our customers because our team is not really worried about coming to the office at 8 or leaving at 5 or having 1 hour lunch. They will do whatever they need to do to make sure that the goals are achieved and accomplished. And so it makes it for a very dynamic culture. And we have been able to grow the company successfully with that particular aspect of our culture. The other component is the purpose-driven approach. We're a B Corp certified company, and we're incredibly proud of becoming a B Corp and being part of the B Corp movement. But even before we had the certification, we always thought that logistics was a good place to start when it came to making a positive impact in the world. And so we wanted to use and leverage logistics to change our communities for the better, not only by growing the company and giving jobs, but then every time that we move a container or move anything, we donate to different causes. In
Right.
the US, we donate to children or meals through Serve in Kenya, and then in Mexico, it's children with cancer and their families. In Chile, we help children with special needs. And so every time that we open an office, the people and the team in that office assigns a purpose to what we're doing, and then we actually donate a portion of our profits to that cause and that organization. And the third thing is really just the way our organizational model works. We're trying to develop entrepreneurs and business owners because I very honestly think that the best way to make a positive impact in this world is to foster this entrepreneurial mindset a little bit more and to help people that want to start companies start their own companies and be their own bosses
Mhm.
and grow their own teams and organizations. So we have this model in which if you reach certain milestones, our team can actually have access to equity in their smaller teams called cell cells. And I'll share a video with you so you can maybe post with the interview if you don't mind, because that will
Mhm.
be will explain kind of our three main pillars a little bit better than what I just did. But that's basically who we are and why we do what we do. And our niche is, of course, companies that are have a high level of service or need to have a high level of service. So we're a boutique kind of niche logistics company. We do a lot of expedited, a lot of remote regions of the world,
Mhm.
time sensitive materials. We work with companies that we charter airplanes and things like that.
When you describe those three differentiators or pillars, what I didn't hear is the standard boilerplate things that a typical 3PL or freight forwarder would say. So that was actually quite refreshing, and it's actually something that does, I think, make you stand out. Did I hear or see some to the effect of you all are the first or only B Corp certified organization in your class, or where are you at with that
It's
journey?
in the, we actually are the first one in the US, Mexico, and Chile to become B Corp certified. And a lot of companies don't even know, or a lot of people don't even know what a B Corporation is. And so for everyone out there, I would strongly recommend that you Google first and foremost, because I'm sure that I'm going to do a disservice explaining it. But in very short, B corporations are basically geared, and you have to go through an extensive process to certify as a B corporation. But the main difference from other corporations is that you're actually trying to maximize stakeholder value as opposed to shareholder value. So you want to make sure that everyone that works with your company is well taken care of, and that's a very different approach to doing business than just trying to maximize your shareholder value or the owner's profits.
Right. That is a very non-traditional approach, I think in the industry for sure. I'm kind of curious, the podcast, where does that enter in the picture? When did the inspiration start for that?
Well, the podcast called Logistics with Purpose. It comes through my friendship with Scott Luton, the owner and CEO of Supply Chain now. We were talking a while back about like his company and supply chain now, and I was telling him a little bit about some of the clients that we're working with, and I told him like how interesting our clients were and how inspiring they were, because of course we work in all these different purpose-driven industries. And I told him, listen, maybe you should have all these guys in your podcast because I think we'll make it for a very good episode because you're sharing positive stories about people and businesses as opposed
Hmm.
to the more challenging everyday logistics stories. So long story short, he said he liked the idea, but then he said that it would be great if I could help him with that. And I said, I'm not a podcast host. I really don't have time for hosting. And he convinced me. He said, "Listen, I'll produce the episodes if you actually help me interview the people." And honestly, I'm very thankful that he did that because it's been a pleasure for me, and it actually helps me as therapy almost every
Yeah.
time that I have to interview one of these entrepreneurs or one of these companies or these organizations. It's and you know this as well, right? It's just it's a joy, and it actually helps you see things differently, and I think it actually motivates you to keep going. So that's kind of how Logistics with Purpose came about. It had no kind of preconceived strategy that
No,
wanted
no
to
business
complement.
plan written ahead of
Not at
time.
all. It was one of those things that happen, and we're just pretty good at like paying attention to new ideas, and we're pretty good at making a lot of mistakes. So when we hear a good idea, we say, why not? And then we try it and we try it hard. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, then we've learned something and we move on to the next one.
Maybe kind of continuing on, just could you elaborate a little bit on that, the results oriented work environment? That seemed pretty interesting. Can you just remind like what the name of that was, or
Yeah, and
that was
I'm
particular
actually
book?
looking here trying to see because I always have like a book, but it's actually downstairs. But it's called Why Work Sucks is the name of the book.
Okay.
And I will send you a link as well so you can post it in the meeting notes. But what it is all about is really treating adults like adults, right? So instead of like really policing people, which I believe some industries and some companies actually do a lot of, we say, what are the most important things for each role? And let's just focus about those things, right? And I'll use the same example that I use most of the time because it's easier to understand, which is salespeople, sales reps. I mean, for
Hmm.
us, the most important part of a sales rep is how much gross margin do you bring to the company, right? Revenues are nice, but revenues are not margin. So we want the margin. We don't really need the revenues. Moving a lot of containers is nice, but again, who cares? It's not about moving containers, really. It actually comes down to the margin. And so what we think is if you're going to measure performance in that particular job, then gross margin should be the biggest actually driver and KPI, as opposed to how many phone calls you make or how many visits you make or how many lunches you attend or and there's a lot of other companies out there. And again, all models work, but we believe that actually focusing on what matters the most at all times actually creates a very efficient culture and actually um, gives us the opportunity to to bring interesting people into our company because of the culture, right? So you're not worried about if for example, you, which are a really good salesperson, and I know that for a fact, if it takes you 10 minutes of your month, I mean, or 30 days, what difference does it make? I mean, just get to the gross margin commitment or goal, and then if you want to go play golf the rest of the day, we shouldn't care, right?
Yeah.
Or if you do what you're supposed to be doing and you want to go and see your son play soccer the rest of the afternoon or take guitar lessons or go to the gym or do whatever, then it should be okay. There shouldn't be a problem as long as, again, you're reaching the agreements that you have and you're getting your part of the job done.
I've heard the phrase trading your time for money, and I think that that has been the traditional approach with companies and employees is, you give me your time and I give you a paycheck, and I think that being able to elevate above that and say, give me your talents, and if your talent is efficient and productive, then I don't necessarily need to pay you for every
Right.
hour of your time, but the outcome from that time.
Absolutely. Like give me the results and then I'll give you the paycheck, right? It's at the end of the day, uh, time is a very limited resource, right? And
Right.
if a 9 to 5 for some people doesn't mean the same for everyone. So maybe you don't like working, you're not a morning person. So, and yet you're dragged to come here in the morning and you're probably spending 30, 40 minutes in traffic and your long commute and you're driving at the same time that everyone else is driving. And why are you doing it? Again, some people need to do that because there's like a reason for being at the office at a certain time. And then if that's the case, then that is part of your results and that's okay. But if it isn't, then what difference does it make if you are at your house working from your bed if you want, as opposed to being at the office, especially now with technology. So we just basically believe that if you give time back to the people will then basically just work harder and commit more and really be more passionate about what they do. And I think if you have that, then you attract more talent, and then also you can provide better service to all our accounts.
For sure. For sure. I'm curious because you've been at this for a while and you're a strategic thinker. And I think you look at things in a different way. I'd be interested to hear your perspective on the big AI, the two letters everyone's talking about, and especially in light of one, the supply chain industry. But I'm actually curious what, within your ecosystem, within Vector, how you all are looking at it, given that you all have a slightly different approach to how you do business.
Well, it's a very important question to ask, and I think AI is here to stay. I think it will revolutionize everything, and so we're trying to adopt AI in any possible way. Again, trying to be smart about it, trying to make sure that once again we give time back to our employees so that they can actually take more time to do the things that matter most, which for our company is developing personal relationships with people we work with, not only our clients, which are, of course, incredibly important, but also with other team members and our suppliers, which are equally important. So I feel like AI is amazing. We're all very excited about it. And to give you a more practical example, I think we're one of the few companies. There's a few already, but we actually, since the beginning, we're starting to use AI to file for some of the imports. So our customs brokerage business that we just recently started, with the help of Amanda, we said from the very get-go, let's explore this AI functionality. And now we're using AI, so we get all the documents. AI actually reads the documents and then transcribes some of that, digitizes them, and then puts them into the different categories that you need to put them into, and then into the software that you need to file all this import and entries with CBP. So that's just one very simple example of
Yeah.
some of the things that we're doing with AI. We have our own performance portal, which is used to track real-time metrics of all the different employees around the world. We have a client portal, which has a GPS tracking system. And so we're trying to plug in AI to a lot of different things here and there, always trying to test. I mean, we haven't really figured out like a comprehensive way of having just one single thing, and I don't think that that's something that AI will provide. Maybe farther down the road, but I think it's going to be AI in many different ways, in many different forms, applied to many different tasks throughout the day or throughout your your company's activities.
Yes, it's definitely seems like it's going to be a Swiss Army knife type of
Correct.
multifunction
Correct.
tool. You started to touch on visibility and a client portal and GPS and that sort of thing. I'm curious. It's a question I often try to ask folks because I think visibility is kind of like one of the buzzwords for supply chain in this decade. Within your sort of scope of work and influence, what does supply chain visibility mean to you?
Well, what it means to me is really being able to understand the different variables of your supply chain in such a way that you can plan ahead. So if visibility doesn't give you enough information for you to then do something with it, then it's like, I mean, for example, with my daughter, I can see where she is because her cell phone is linked to my cell phone. I can now, does it really help me? I mean, I can see where she is. Yeah, she's still at school. She's still, but if you don't do anything with it, I think it just becomes like a distraction again, right? One of those things that it's nice to have, and it might
Hmm.
look great to see your container somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, but if you don't then use that information to something, then really it's just a waste of time and it's just like a nice selling tool. So for me, visibility has to do with the information, but then also with what you do with that information. And I think it is more powerful when you have good visibility and you have good numbers, then you can actually have better forecast models and then you can predict certain challenges or disruptions in supply chain better than other companies. And that's when you become more competitive and that's when you can win, right? If you see that there's something coming in China and you need to actually maybe make bookings differently or maybe start routing things through Vietnam or some other parts in the world, I think that's when it becomes very powerful.
I think if I was gonna encapsulate that, it's taking what a data point, what a pin on a map is, which is a data point, and moving that up, and multiple pieces of data become
Correct.
information. Information
Correct.
becomes intelligence, right? But you've gotta work on it, and you've gotta get the context and leverage it.
So through, and I'll give you another more practical example of that. A client of ours, what they're doing with we have a GPS tracking device on some of the containers, and with this tracking device, you have a geofencing capability. So once you set up the rules around this geofencing, you can basically say, hey, send me an email or send an email to this people when the container's crossing the Panama Canal, which is interesting. And then you can then do something else with it. But the one
Yeah.
thing that they do very, very well is, and we have helped them not only manage it, but devise the whole strategy is like they get certain people in their teams get specific notifications when the containers not only arrived in the port, let's say Savannah, but when it is like 20 miles away from their distribution center, they will send an email to the people working in that distribution center saying, hey, this container, this number with this things inside is 20 miles away from you guys.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's when visibility really means something because now everyone in that distribution center can predict, can work around that and get ready. And if they need to maybe hire other people to unload the container, which is some of the things that some of our clients do, then they have the information available and they know for sure through AI and some automated uh, measures that containers about to arrive at a certain time.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool.
That
Again,
is
it's
pretty cool. Yes,
elevating a
that is
map
pretty cool.
dot to intelligence
Correct.
that leads
Correct.
to action, right? Um, as we kind of wrap up here, I'm kind of curious. A lot of folks have one particular life motto or quote or saying that they kind of live by, that they share a lot, that they refer other people to. Do you have one of those? And if so, I'd love to hear it.
I do, and my kids will probably be laughing about it for me saying it out loud, but I tell them this pretty much every day. But it's in Spanish, so I'll say it in Spanish and then I'll translate it. But it says, "El flojo trabaja doble." That's kind of the saying, and I don't know how well your Spanish is these days, but
I got a little bit of it.
okay, "El flojo trabaja doble." Do you want to give it a shot?
Well, the first part I missed, but I know we've got double the
El
work.
flojo is the lazy guy. So it's el flojo is the lazy, and then trabaja doble works double.
Yep.
So I kind of like constantly say that to my kids. So that's it. That's the one.
Okay. All right. Can you give me like a where does this
So
come into
sometimes when you're
play?
trying to cut corners or you're trying to do something because you're lazy, you end up working twice as much, right?
Right.
So if you actually have something that you need to do or something that needs to get done, if you do it right the first time, right, you'll be much better off. So the lazy people always end up working double.
Gotcha. I like it. I like it. I can see how that would apply to kids pretty well.
Yeah, well, applies to adults as well and to logistics and to everything else, right? I think it's just a
Right.
matter of if you're going to have to do something anyways, you might as well try to do it the best way possible or the to your best of your abilities. Because if you don't, that there's always going to be some rework, and you'll end up working harder and more time as opposed to just putting your 100% commitment to whatever task at hand in that place in that moment.
Right. Right. Well, Enrique, thanks for coming on and sharing some of your experience and expertise. Any last words from your side as we wrap up?
No, this has been great. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and good luck to you. I think what you do is incredibly important, and I so wish you the best of luck and say thank you to all your audience. And I look forward to you coming as a guest to Logistics with Purpose so that we can you as well.
Let's do it. I'll catch you later.